When the grid goes dark, your building doesn't have to. Hey there, welcome to another episode of EV Charging Minute, your place to find weekly tips and knowledge and information about best practices when it comes to commercial real estate and EV charging. I'm Tony Booth, your host and founder of Stay in Charge. As always, thank you for joining me today and joining us at this podcast. Bring this to you every Friday. Just wanting to share topics out there, that things that are happening in the space, and bring topics out so that anybody out there that's looking to figure out what to do with EV charging at their commercial real estate can have a place to go find some answers. That's what we're here for. And as always, thank you for joining me, and anybody, and share this out with people that give us likes, subscribe, all those kind of fun things. We always, it's always nice to have that. And if you ever need to get in touch with me or send me ideas, topics, things you want to know about, questions you have, feel free. TONYB@stayincharge.com. Always glad to answer any questions. So moving on to today's topic, in the beginning there, I talked about, hey, when the building goes dark, or when the grid goes dark, your building doesn't have to, right? Like, talking about backup power, right? Like that's what we're talking about today. And we can look at your parking lot being part of that backup, being a backup generator and serving as that emergency power needs in a vehicle to building scenario. So, what is that in all talk about, right? Like, we've talked a little bit about vehicle to grid, right? Like, that's a thing that's out there and it's coming, where you can, have your vehicles, your electric vehicles, supply power back to the grid in key times. Vehicle to building is the same thing, only we're not selling energy back to the power company. We're not, kind of waiting on them to implement a program. We're setting it up so that our building can operate using the stored energy in our vehicles that are there. I know this sounds a little out there. I know when I first heard it years and years ago, I'm like, yeah, how does that really work, and how can it be reliable? And so I want to just, preface that all by saying we're going to talk each through that a little bit, and you'll understand by the end that this is something that's actually viable and it does make sense, right? I mean, I'm not going to tell you to run out today and, put a transfer switch up so that you can power your building with your EV. But you can, right? Like, and actually when you look at a residential market, there's a lot of people that are doing that already, right? Like, there's people that already have that. I mean, they have the charger and they have the vehicle that can do that, and they set it up with a transfer switch so that they can power their house when they need to. So that it's no different doing that to a commercial building. So vehicle to building is basically the same thing as putting a generator in or some type of emergency power. And ISO 15118, which we've talked about a few different times, that's your plug to charge at your vehicle to grid. That also is the standard that makes vehicle to building possible. So, this can really happen. The standards are there. The hardware's getting there. The vehicles are getting there, things like that. So this can work. And, a lot of times when I talk about this, or when people talk about this, the kind of the first thing that comes to mind is, like, oh, come on home. Really, we can support a building with a few EVs in the parking lot? Well, understand, first of all, when these things happen, just like an emergency backup power system or generator system, you're supporting the emergency power only. You're not trying to run, if you've got a 100-unit condo, you're not trying to run everybody's household. You're not trying to run the whole building. You're running that emergency power. So think about typical, if you're ever in a commercial or a multifamily type building like that, when the power goes out, you're going to have some emergency lightings in the hallways that get you places. The elevator is going to run so that nobody gets trapped. Sometimes that'll only run once until it's down to the bottom. And then other times, depending on the system, it may run more than that. But just depending, but this is what it does. It'll run some, depending on your building and your needs, it may run some basic refrigeration. It may run some basic HVAC. It'll run some security so people don't get locked in buildings and things like that. So you're not supporting a full building load. So you are supporting a smaller load. Often this is best to be done in conjunction with some type of battery backup or generator. And we'll talk a little bit about that, as we walk through the numbers, because the difference between a battery backup or a generator is your EVs are not stationary, right? So, we could design a system using the EVs, but if they don't happen to be there or half of them are gone at the time, it's not, we have to have a lot of redundancy in a system. But the value, if you think about the value of setting up a backup power system like this, is if you have it set up where it can run off of your EVs, and you have a condo complex with 10 residents with EVs, or you have a fleet at your business with EVs, when the power does go off for whatever reason, and you have to power the building for 2 hours, if you're doing that with your EV batteries, it didn't cost you anything, right? Like, you didn't pay any money for that, versus if you have to run the generator for 2 hours, it's costing you money, right? So that's where this starts to make sense. And it also allows you to, if you can rely on a certain percentage of EV, you can lower the cost of your generator installs and things like that. So this does work, and we'll walk through some numbers just to kind of, understand, and you'll see that it actually can work. But if you think about, when the power goes out, what do we need? So we need to know, right, what are we running? And typically in a commercial building, there's a separate panel that's the emergency panel, and everything that's on that, so you can look at that and see what I need to run, what your normal power load is under that emergency side. And then with that, you can say, okay, I need X number of kilowatts to run that load. Then you can figure out how many, how long do you want to be able to run without power, right? This will depend on how you would design your system, what your emergency system is. Some systems are designed to run multiple hours. Some are designed to only run a little bit. Just depends on what you really need there. If it's emergency enough to get everybody out of the building and safe and secure, then you don't need as much as if you need to power a refrigeration unit or something like that. So that's all, the engineers figure all that out. So you figure out how much demand you need. And then if you look at a typical EV, it's going to have roughly an 80 kilowatt battery in it. And if you're getting 90% efficiency when you transfer that energy, that full battery can give you about 72 kilowatt hours. Now, obviously, when we're doing the math, we're not going to expect that every single EV in the parking lot is going to be 100% full, and we're not going to drain it down to zero. So, you kind of work on some factors there. But as an example, let's say you have a condo that's got some emergency lighting, security, HVAC system in the lobby, and we want the elevator to run to get everything down to the bottom floors. We calculate that demand is roughly 100 kilowatts. If everything was running all 100%, 100 kilowatts. Cool. I want to keep the building up, and I want to keep this all going for 4 hours. So I need 400 kilowatt hours. Okay, if I take that 72 kilowatt hours we can get from a single EV, then this would tell me I need about 5.5 or 6 vehicles. But as I said, we can't rely on them all to be full. So, you maybe run at a factor of 50%, but I only need 12 vehicles. So if you think about that, if I have a condo, like I said, with 100 rooms, and we need 100 kilowatts to run the emergency power, with 100 doors, it's highly possible, especially depending on where I'm located, that I could have 10 residents or 12 residents or 20 residents that have EVs. So I could have plenty of power sitting in my parking lot to power the building for those 4 hours. Or it might only have enough to power it for 3 before my emergency generator kicks in and runs for the remaining time that the power's out. So as you can see, this can work, and it's not extraordinarily awkward numbers to make it work. When I first got thinking about this and heard about this years ago, like I said, I mean, my first thing was like, there's no way we're going to have enough power in the battery of a car to really make a difference. But when you really start breaking the numbers out and you look at it, you do. And you know, reading some of the stories with the people with the Ford Lightning being able to run their homes in a, you know, in a storm outage for days, you start to realize, okay, this can work, right? Like this can. And what it ends up doing, as I mentioned, it just makes a little bit less expensive solution, right? It's not going to, first of all, you're never going to rely on it 100% because it's not going to meet the criteria for emergency power for safety reasons, right? Like it's not going to, you know, you can't guarantee that there's a car going to be plugged up when that power goes off. So if you have to put, you know, emergency backup power for safety reasons, you're going to have to, you know, you're going to have other solutions as part of this. Okay. But what it does is it allows you to make a less expensive solution that you back up with a battery energy or, you know, battery energy storage or or a reliable generator. So that way you're only tapping into those pieces that cost you money, right? Like the generator to run, obviously we're burning diesel fuel when the generator runs. So we don't have to tap in and run that diesel fuel for the 4 hours that we have in battery storage. But when it clicks into hour 5 and the batteries are all starting to drain out, boom, now our generator kicks in and takes over. But, you know, what did we save in those 4 hours? You know, of that generator not running and not burning fuel. You know, if it's burning, you know, 10, 20 gallons an hour, you know, we'd save 40, $50. Just $200. I mean, does your power go out a lot? Some places they have a lot of stuff like this that happens, you know, so it can make sense is my point. It's a good thing. Now let's take a look a little bit at the hurdles of doing this. There are a few hurdles, especially if you're talking about, you know, what your location is. So if you're putting these in and you're saying, hey, I'm going to put some vehicle to building backup power here, and I'm doing this in a residential unit or an apartment complex. Well, now we got to start, you know, wondering, okay, who owns that power? Okay. We're letting our tenants or our, you know, our customers plug in and charge. Like at a hotel, I plug in at night into my hotel. Is that my power or their power? Do they have the right to go in and, you know, take the power back out of my vehicle? That's where you'll work with your service providers and things like that. You can put clauses in there. We can absolutely say that, you know, that can be a clause in the agreement that the people signed when they plugged into your charger. If they're tenants and stuff like that, maybe you could offer them some type of discount if they participate in the program. It does, you know, some people are going to be a little leery about something like this because they'll be like, oh, well, I don't want my car drained. Well, and normally we'll set these programs. We don't ever drain them below a certain level, and they can kind of choose that level so that, you know, if something were to happen, they know that they're going to have at least enough power in the morning to do their thing. So that's what you do there. That is one of the challenges, but you work that out with your, you know, your agreements there. The next big thing and the main thing really is your hardware requirements. So you got to have chargers that are compatible with all this, right? They have to be compatible with the 15118-20 standard, which allows, you know, the charger to operate that way. And you need obviously a transfer switch. Like, you know, you can't just, like anybody that's lived in places where you have, you know, storms and things like that, they always warn you, don't ever just plug power into your house without having a transfer switch, because you'll feed that back. You can feed it back to the grid. So you need an emergency transfer switch, which basically stops any power from going from your building back to the grid when the grid shuts down. That's a huge concern and a huge safety thing. You can't be feeding power back out into the neighborhood. So you need that transfer switch. It helps a lot if you have an energy management system, because then it can all be coordinated. And then the last kind of hurdle that you need to look at is making sure your software is that 15118 compatible as well, because you are going to need some software to manage this. The software needs to know what the parameters are when the charger starts requesting power from the vehicle, right? What are the parameters? What are we allowing? Is it what's the state of charge allowances and things like that, so that all that can be properly established and managed. So those are the things that, that are the real important pieces of it. Obviously, there's other things, how you get it all set up, where you locate it. There's a little other pieces to it, but the main thing is establishing who owns the power, how that's all going to work, what your hardware requirements are, and things like that. So, really, today's really take action from today. You kind of the next steps is for many of us, this really doesn't even play into, but for anybody out there that's looking into any type of backup energy, if you're building a new building that's going to require it, and you're in these situations where EVs are going to be involved, fleet buildings are a big thing, right? Commercial office buildings, even, a lot of commercial office buildings, when they're being built now, especially in the high penetration areas, you're going to have 10, 15, 20, maybe even 30 chargers in the parking lot. So think about how much power is sitting out there in the middle of the day if you needed emergency backup power, right? So that's, if you're doing something like that, if you're building new or you're upgrading your existing systems, then you want to make sure you talk to your engineers and everybody and see about adding EV as a component to that emergency power stuff. All right. So before you invest in installing or upgrading your backup energy solution, just make sure you consider this V2B EV charging into the mix of your storage, so that you can save a little money there. All right. That's really what it's all about. It's just kind of giving you a nice way to save a little money. Some places you might even, if you have a fleet, you might even say, hey, today I don't have backup power, but maybe I'd like to have backup power. Well, okay, guess what? If you have a fleet of EVs, it's easy to get backup power now, because you don't need to buy a generator. You don't need to buy all that stuff. You just need an electrician and a transfer switch to hook it all up. So that's the other side of it, right? Like, a lot of what I was talking about today is where we're mandated to have emergency power. But if you look at some of these as where you're not mandated, this can become a very easy way to say, instead of buying a, $10,000 generator and investing in all that electrical work and excuse me, maintenance and operation of all that, I'm just going to do some vehicle to building with my EV, and I'll have the, backup that I need. So that's an easy way to take care of it all and support some backup power at your building. All right. That's all for this week. Next week, we're going to take a look at retail loyalty, promotions, things like that, how we wrap EV charging into loyalty programs and things like that in retail, hospitality, all those different things, how we can actually, both directions, use the loyalty of existing brands to drive usage of the charging, and then help charging, have charging help support your retail locations. So that's next week. It's a fun topic. It's really kind of what a lot of EV charging is all about in the level 2 space, for sure. And definitely a great way for those of you that are on the DC side, looking at maybe that's, when do I do that conversion? When do I start putting some of that out there? This does a lot. We're going to talk a lot about how we use that to drive loyalty. All right. That is all for today. Thank you again, as always, for joining in and being here. And everybody have an amazing weekend, and we'll see you next week.